with our presentation. Welcome to the Blackout Hate Project webinar series. Today's today's presentation is actually the fifth presentation in the Blackout Hate Project. And today's presentation is entitled Don't Take the Bait: Spotting Online Hate and How to Stay Away. Today's webinar is built specifically with youth in mind. It's actually part two of a two-part series on online hate. Part one happened live a few weeks ago and was geared toward helping parents or adult caregivers understand what happens behind the screens. And I provided tools to help them support youth who experience anti-Black hate online. The main objective today is to help you all, as the youth or younger adults, to help you guys navigate, as you are the ones mainly navigating the online world, whether on a laptop or video gaming, on social media, on your phones. All of these different aspects of your life take place in the online world. And there's a lot that happens on these social media platforms and online gaming chat rooms. And so today's presentation is intended to help you identify ways that hate groups are currently active on some of these platforms and how they may try to recruit youth or spread hate online, and how to protect yourself from taking the bait, essentially, not getting caught up in these hate groups and also not being impacted by the hateful narratives that they're spewing online all of the time. We'll also discuss ways that you can help support yourself and your friends when you experience online hate, how to cope with it, and how to stay away from it as much as possible. My name is Natasha Daly, and I will be today's presenter. I'm a lawyer and registered social worker, and I currently work on the Blackout Hate Project alongside Don Parchment and Adrian Leckie, who are also here with us today in the chat. The Blackout Hate Project is an initiative that's created and hosted by the Black Legal Action Centre, funded by the Department of Canadian Heritage and the Government of Canada. And while this presentation today is made possible through the support of these organizations, the views and opinions that I express in the presentation are only those of the presenters, being me, and they don't necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or endorsements of the Government of Canada or Canadian Heritage. And as a disclaimer, neither Canadian Heritage nor the Government of Canada assumes any responsibility for the content of today's presentation. As a personal disclaimer, more so covering myself, today's discussion will be sort of a general discussion on some legal concepts, not so much the legal pieces as much, but also sometimes on social things. But anything that may seem legal-ish, it's not intended to be legal advice. And so there's no lawyer-client relationship sort of thing between myself or you as the presenters. And today's session is being recorded and it may be published online. I also want to do a land acknowledgement. And even though we're in a virtual space, sorry, one moment. I think there might be some tech issues happening. Sorry, give me one moment. Can you guys confirm if you can actually see the slides pretty well in the presentation?
Yes, Natasha, I can see the slide. I'm seeing the land acknowledgement now.
Fully, okay, and then also my picture, or
Yeah,
is it
yeah, I'm
small?
seeing you and I'm seeing the land acknowledgement. They're same size, side by side. It's fine.
Okay, thank you so much for confirming that, Don.
No problem.
Sorry for the interruption, everyone. Even though we're in a virtual space, as I was saying before, and many of us are coming from different parts of the Greater Toronto area, it seems, some from London, some from Toronto. I want to acknowledge the land that we're on, and we are on the ancestral traditional territories of the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, and in particular, the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. It's also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Today, what's known as Tkaronto, well, before it was known as Tkaronto, the traditional Mohawk name of this area, but we now call it Toronto. and its surrounding areas are still home to many Indigenous people. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. I also acknowledge the many people of African descent who are not settlers, but whose ancestors were forcibly displaced as part of the transatlantic slave trade, brought against their will, and made to work on these lands. Indigenous sovereignty is deeply and inextricably linked to Black liberation, and I will continue to take action in solidarity with Indigenous people and communities. A few housekeeping rules. With respect to participation, I want you guys to know that although you are all muted, the chat is fully open. So I want you to continue to use the chat throughout the presentation. If you have any questions, or even when I ask questions to you guys, feel free to put your answers in the chat. If you have any technical issues or questions, feel free to private message our host named Black Legal Action Center or tech support. And also, please remain respectful in the chat. Of course, we want this to be a safe space for everybody involved. So any rude or offensive language will result in removal from the presentation. Now, I do want myself to be a bit smaller so you guys can fully see the slides, especially when I'm going to be showing some important videos that I want you guys to pay attention to. So let me actually just see if I can ensure the content is more focused rather than me. Okay. Okay. I hope that that's good for everyone. Okay. Let's get into today's presentation. So, as we know, youth, young adults, we spend a whole bunch of time on our screens and on our phones. And essentially, today's presentation is going to talk about what happens in that online world. There's a few key objectives. First, we're going to talk about the difference between anti-Black racism and anti-Black hate. Then, as youth, we're going to talk about your own social development and sort of what's happening around that 13 to 20 years old sort of age group. We're also going to talk about anti-Black hate and how it's been showing up on certain platforms such as Roblox, which is a video gaming platform, and on social media like Instagram, TikTok. We'll talk about what you guys should be looking out for in terms of things you should be trying to stay away from, how to stay away from those things, and the impact that hate has on your mind, your body, and your social relationships. And then I also want to provide you guys with some support of how you guys can build resilience with some good coping strategies for yourselves as well. So first, to begin with, anti-Black hate is slightly different from anti-Black racism. Racism is often the more common term that people are used to, but the difference between the two is mainly about the type of conduct. The difference between something being anti-Black racism or anti-Black hate is the nature and severity of the conduct. Anti-Black racism refers to, almost you could think of it as like an umbrella term that can include both explicit, so things that are more in your face, but also more subtle or hidden expressions of anti-Black racism. But anti-Black hate is much more explicit and it's in your face. Anti-Black racism can be defined as prejudice, attitudes, beliefs, stereotyping, and discrimination that's directed at people of African descent, and it often finds its roots in slavery. Whereas anti-Black racism can show up in the systemic sense that we know it as, often in through unconscious bias. It's often normalized, unfortunately, and it goes unseen by the larger white society in many instances. Anti-Black racism shows up in social, economic, educational, and political spaces, and it leads to a lot of inequality for Black people. But while anti-Black racism shows up as discrimination, through sometimes expressed but more often subtle or unconscious biases, Anti-Black hate in particular refers to extreme forms of expression or motivation that meet a higher legal threshold of what's called vilification. Vilification is basically the act of publicly attacking, bullying, or spreading hateful things about a person or group of people to try to make others hate, fear, or dislike that person, but also to cause that person to feel like they themselves are not worthy of human dignity and respect. So anti-Black hate goes beyond, teasing someone. It's it's anything that aims to make people feel intense dislike or even fear for their own safety based on their race as a Black person. Now, there's also a slight difference between hate incidents that might just happen and then something that actually rises to the level of being considered a hate crime. And you've probably heard a lot of things in the news or even seen a bunch of stuff on social media about hate crimes. And there's a rise in hate crimes nowadays towards Black people, towards those who are Muslim, and also towards other racial and ethnic and even religious groups. So let's actually define what some of those terms are. A hate incident is considered a non-criminal action or behavior that's motivated by hate against an easily identifiable group. Basically, meaning that, or some examples rather, of a hate incident can include using racial slurs against, again, an identifiable group that's identifiable based on their race or the color of their skin, or insulting a person because of their ethnic or religious dress or how they identify. For example, an argument in a parking lot or in the hallway of your school might turn into verbal abuse or racial slurs. These incidents are very harmful and lead to emotional and mental harm for those involved. On the other hand, a hate crime, as opposed to just a hate incident, is a criminal offense and it's committed against the person or their property. And again, it's motivated by that hate or that bias or prejudice against a clearly identifiable group of people. And a clear group may be identified again by their race, their religion, their age, their mental or physical disability, or even their sexual orientation or gender identity or expression, or a culmination of all of these things. So this means that acts of violence, even the uttering of threats, for example, involved in many anti-Black hate incidences, can rise to the level of a hate crime. When we talk about hate groups, we're referring to radical groups of people that come together to encourage and engage in hostility or violence against people based on particular characteristics that they hate or that they deem to be inferior. For example, there are various groups that form based on their shared hatred of Black people, often called white supremacy groups. They can have different kinds of names, and some are clearly hate groups based on their name, but sometimes it isn't as obvious, especially online, which is why you have to be careful. And I encourage you all to get your parents or a trusted adult involved to help you anytime something seems a bit off. In terms of being able to identify a hate crime, which I would then encourage you to, if you think you've been a victim of a hate crime or you think you've witnessed one, I would encourage you to again get your parent or a trusted adult involved so that they can report it accordingly. Some of the indicators that you may have just experienced or witnessed a hate crime is one, looking at or listening to the comments that were made during the incident, whether it's happening online or actually physically in front of you. If the person who did the hateful thing had no other reason other than the race of the Black person to actually have acted or to have said what they said, that's also a clear indicator that, hey, what that person did is probably motivated by race. Your perception that you were targeted because of your race, so what you think and what you feel matters in that moment as well. You also want to look for the display of any hate symbols or gestures or hateful language that was used in that moment. If there's also a pattern of harassment, humiliation, or even someone trying to intimidate you or others, that's also a key indicator that a hate crime may be taking place. The key factor to keep in mind is that if the actions intentionally target individuals or property based on the offender's hate towards that identifiable group, you may be dealing with a hate crime. And again, it's important to report those and get your parents or a trusted adult involved. I know that was a lot of information, so let's just do a quick little pop quiz here to make sure that we're learning and understanding the importance of identifying anti-Black hate in particular. Let's look at number one. If someone calls you an ugly black monkey, based on the definitions that I just gave, is that something that you would consider uh, a hate crime, hate incident, or an instance of anti-Black racism? You can feel free to put chat. Anyone want to give it a try? Okay, I'll give the answer. So I would consider number one, someone calling you an ugly black monkey. Certainly, that's not that's not okay that they're doing that. But that might be more on the side of certainly anti-Black racism. Certainly, they're teasing you or bullying you as a result of you being Black and them clearly having some sort of bias against you being Black. But that comment alone might not rise to the level of being a hate crime or even being a significant hate incident that ought to be significantly reported to the authorities. If this happens in your school or even online, it's definitely something that you should try to distance yourself from. But what the focus of this presentation today is, and what we want to bring more awareness to, are things that are happening like number two, where someone might DM you a photo of a noose. A noose is, we see a picture of one right there, that actually was used back in slavery to unfortunately harm Black people at that time. So if someone DMs you a photo of a noose, that's a classic hate symbol and definitely leans in, definitely is and should be recognized as anti-Black hate, especially if they also include certain phrases like, you don't belong at our school. And if they do this multiple times, this is now something that has risen to a higher, more serious standard that you definitely want to be reporting to people that are involved and distancing yourself from it as much as possible. Again, we're going to talk about this later in the presentation, but if someone's DMing this to you, this is something where you can block and report this individual so that you can distance yourself from that conduct as well. Now, let's talk really quickly about your social and even your mental development. There was a theory a long time ago that was developed, and this theory is called the psychosocial stages of development. It essentially involves this idea that people go through 8 stages of development from when you're a baby into your late adulthood. And each stage involves different things that shape a person's personality and identity. You'll see in the image to the right that each stage is marked by 2 opposing things. According to the theory, there is an internal battle that happens between 2 things at each stage. If people successfully deal with the battle, they advance through that stage with mental strengths that help them develop a strong sense of self. The stage that applies to adolescents or those who are aged around 12 to 19 years old is called identity versus role confusion. Understanding some of the key elements of this stage is important because anti-Black hate can cut to the very root of someone's identity when they experience or witness it, and it can impact your development as well. But you can also use this information to help you cope and develop into your best self. At this stage, the 2 things that are at conflict, as is in the title, is identity and role confusion. It plays an essential role in developing a sense of personal identity, which will continue to influence your behavior and your development for the rest of your life. So you might find yourself wanting to be more independent at this stage, and that's a good thing. So we don't want to take that independence away, but we want to make sure that you remain safe even while being independent. And at this stage of your lives, it's important to look to your social relationships and social interactions with others to help define that identity and finding your place in society, which makes your social relationships, even those that happen in the online world, like your family and your friends, very important. And so it's totally understandable that you're seeking that sense of belonging. However, the fact that you're in this stage of seeking that sense of belonging often makes you a target, unfortunately, for hate groups that may try to lure you in because of that sense of belonging. So sometimes a hate group or someone who is trying to lure you in for the purposes of spreading hate or for a bad motive may not start out the conversation like that. Instead, they might start it out trying to build a sense of trust and a sense of community with you, and then down the line, use it for an improper purpose, essentially, and use it to spread that hate. So it also makes experiencing hate in online group settings particularly harmful because that hate is now infiltrating a space that at one point was safe and that I know a lot of youth find safety in. And so again, the important thing to keep in mind here is that while hate is seeping into online spaces and while youth at your stage have become targets for people who are spreading hateful narratives, as we'll soon discuss, we don't want you guys to simply completely stay away from social media altogether. That's not what we're advocating for. But it's more so important that as you learn to identify what anti-Black hate looks like, what kind of tactics these hate groups might be using to try to lure you in, that you are also now more aware of what's happening, what could be happening, and how to stay away from it so that you don't get involved in it and you can stay safe. So let's move into that. This presentation is more so going to be focusing on video gaming platform and also looking at social media a little bit. So online platforms that you need to watch out for. Essentially, there was a news article, which is what the clip on the left is from, that discussed the fact that researchers have found anti-Semitism, which we know is hate against Jewish people, racism, and homophobia on platforms such as DLive and Odyssey, where users are essentially streaming and chatting about video games like Call of Duty and Minecraft. DLive is a live streaming platform known for its creator-centric model that rewards users and streamers with cryptocurrency. So it's kind of like a YouTube or an alternative to YouTube. But it's gained a lot of prominence and it's attracted a lot of racist and extremist groups because of low supervision within the platform itself. Some people include their hateful narratives in everyday conversations on these platforms as a way to continue to spread the hate. These conversations may begin through the video game itself, but then users on the other end actually end up suggesting that you move to other platforms like a Telegram channel to discuss something more. And that's where you need to also become aware and stay away. Other platforms to watch out for include different social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram and even Snapchat. So what does this actually look like? In some of these video gaming platforms, one that we're going to talk a lot about today is Roblox. Some of these platforms create role play scenarios within different games on different platforms. And it's the role play scenario that is actually perpetuating a hateful narrative rather than just being a game that you're playing for fun. For example, on Roblox, there was a game that invited players to become a racist and simulate the murder of ethnic minorities by running them over with a car. Now, on these platforms, again, there's low monitoring for safety and making sure that there's even just proper content on there. And so this is why it's important to even get your parents involved, which we'll talk about soon, and to block and restrict people or content that is hateful in nature. So what is Roblox if you haven't heard about it before? It's a massive online platform and game creation system with over 380 million monthly active users worldwide. The picture is actually part of what it might look like, and if it's familiar to you, put it in the chat and let me know. Users on Roblox can create their own games, referred to as experiences, and play other users' creations, personalizing their profiles and avatars. It allows you to join groups and speak to other people. It's in its its open nature is actually what makes it particularly harmful because everyone across the entire globe can create their own content and create their own games or experiences that other people then have access to. It's also been known as a youth-focused gaming platform, with 56% of its users being under the age of 16 years old, and just over 20% are under the age of 9 years old, while only 19% of users are older than 25. So you can see again, a lot of youth using these platforms, we're using this gaming platform, and that's again why a lot of adults who want to spread hateful narratives or recruit youth or even begin to change the way that youth think about these kinds of issues will use a gaming platform like Roblox to be able to do that. So what does that actually look like? What does that radicalization look like? Well, first, radicalization refers to the process where individuals or groups adopt increasingly extreme political, social, or religious views, moving away from mainstream beliefs toward ideologies that can justify violence, hate, or terrorism to achieve radical change. This can happen gradually, or often influenced by online content or extremist recruiters offering a sense of purpose or identity. Unfortunately, underneath Roblox's kid-friendly or youth-friendly facade, it actually has many issues. And some of those issues is that, as I said before, anybody as a user on the platform can create their own game. And if that person wants to create a game that is racist in nature, there's nothing within the platform that necessarily stops or hinders them from being able to do so. And there's not a lot of monitoring on the platform to catch every single one of these instances. So one example is actually I have a picture on the bottom right. You'll see a picture of, think of it as like a snapshot from the person's point of view. And this is actually a live snapshot that was included in an article from 2025, so not that long ago, from a company called or a user called Active Shooter Studios, or ASS for short. And that group of people would create games or experiences that centered around mass violence. And that particular picture is from one of their games where they essentially recreated a real life mass shooting that took place in Boston in 2022, where that shooter intentionally targeted Black people who were deliberately targeted and killed. That's just one example of what some of these games might look like. Again, it might seem like a regular show or not show. It might seem like a regular game or experience, but it actually is infiltrating hateful narratives in the midst of it. Other things to look out for on Roblox include people's usernames. So oftentimes a username may have a connection to a white supremacist group, or it might have a name that's similar sounding or clearly intentionally misspelled to someone who spread hate. For example, they may call it Zitler instead of Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler was one of the, well, not even one of, like, was the leader in the Holocaust, which again spread hate and genocide toward Jewish people. These are the kinds of usernames that you want to be looking out for, and anything that may signal to you white supremacy or hate against Black people. You might also want to pay attention to the in-game t-shirts that are available on Roblox. As you know, you can create your own avatars, but there's also a feature in Roblox that allows you to buy different clothes and even create your own types of clothes. So a user that might be trying to spread anti-Black hate or even recruit people into hate groups might put racist sorry, my throat's dry. Might put racist slogans or flags or even racist symbols on an in-game t-shirt. There are also other groups active on these platforms as well. For example, you might see a group that's titled White I put XYZ as like fill in the blanks, such as, for example, white laces. Now, when it comes to the actual gaming experiences, some of those titles might also jump out to you. And one example that I put is Racist Tycoon, which, based on the picture, is again one of the ones that was used in this particular game. And those kinds of names for experiences often hint toward the game being filled with racism and with hate. And those are the kinds of experiences that you want to stay away from. So, okay, you can learn about how to stay away, you can learn that you should stay away, but how do we actually do that? One of the main ways you can do that is by monitoring and controlling or restricting the kind of content that shows up on your profile as you're playing the Roblox game. On the game itself, they do have what's called content maturity labels and content labels. You want to be paying attention to stuff that may have a content label of being moderate or restricted. And often they put that label there to explain the kind of content that you can experience on that particular game or experience. So if it's labeled moderate, it means that it may contain moderate violence, light realistic blood, moderate crude humor, unplayable gambling content, for example, and even instilling moderate fear. In the restricted category, which is the most serious one, it may contain like strong violence, a lot of it, heavy realistic blood, and the presence of things like alcohol, strong language, and or also again, moderate fear. You want to stay away from those kinds of experiences. You also want to manage your experiences, which I will talk about in the next slide about how to do that. But I think the most important thing as well to keep in mind is that it's important that you use online safety techniques overall. One of those is do not reply to random messages from people you don't know. So it's one thing if you want to play the game with one of your actual friends that you know in real life, and you know this person, you know what their account username is, you know that it's a safe person that you're working with, that's one thing. But often, again, because there's millions of users on these platforms, random people might try to send you messages. And it's important that you are careful with how you interact with people on these platforms that you don't know. So manage your experiences on Roblox. Number one, and the first most important thing to keep in mind is that Roblox actually sets its own sort of automatic controls on the type of content you can see based on your age at registration. So it's important to always use your accurate age and date of birth when you register. Also, regardless of the age group that you do fall into, you always have the power to block and report annoying, disruptive, inappropriate, or hateful players that you may encounter when you're playing online. For users between the ages of 13 and 17 years old, Roblox also doesn't have like your traditional parental controls, so to speak. Instead, it offers something called transparency tools, and I want to encourage you all to use those. It essentially allows your parents or a trusted adult to be able to see what's happening on your Roblox profile and also to help you stay away from people that are potentially spewing hate. Using this is good because it means you still actually get to be in control of your online world. And your parent, like I said, gets to see certain parts of it to help keep you safe. So your parent or trusted adult has to first be invited by you in order to use this option. So again, you still remain in control. How do you do this? Get your parents or a trusted adult to first create a Roblox account, and then you link their account with yours. I'm about to place, oops, sorry. I'm about to place a link in the chat that actually shows how this happens. And you don't watch it now, but you can watch it later. It's a video that's explaining how to link the accounts together. So you can sit down with your parent and or your trusted adult and actually do it together. You should watch this video because it helps you set it all up so you both know what's happening. Now, after linking your account with your parent's account and activating the right settings, the parent or the trusted adult will then be able to see your connections and trusted connections, see how much time you spend playing and in which experiences, and also receive notifications whenever you may purchase something. Again, the purpose of this isn't to monitor or lord over you or to impede on your independence, but rather to help keep you safe and to work together with your trusted adult to make sure that you don't essentially get caught up or recruited by or impacted by hate groups that are frequently targeting youth on this platform. When it comes to anti-Black hate, your protection and safety should always be your top priority. It's important to keep the lines of communication open with your parents or a trusted adult as well. They can remind you of important things to do to keep yourself safe, like not sharing your real name or address online. And another big one is that if anyone asks for that kind of information in the first place, it's important to immediately block and report them. So, how do you actually block someone on Roblox? Let's take a look at this video.
How to block someone on Roblox. In this video, I'm going to show you how to block someone on a PC or laptop within the Roblox app or the Roblox website. And if this video helps you, please consider giving it a like and also subscribing to my channel because that really helps me out. So if you're playing an experience and you want to block someone, all you need to do is within the game, go up to the top left, select the Roblox icon, and then you'll see a list of all the people in the experience with you. All you need to do is find the person you want to block and then select the little block icon, which is a circle with a line through it next to their name. Select that and then confirm you do indeed want to block this person on Roblox. I'm just going to block them as an example. Once you've done that, you'll see unblocked next to their name, and that person has been successfully blocked on Roblox. Now, if you're in the Roblox website or you're on the main page of the Roblox app on a computer, you can easily block someone by simply selecting and navigating to their profile. Maybe you'll see them in a game or a connection, something like that. You can also search to the top and find the person you want to block by putting their name in and then selecting that name in people. From there, select the person you want to block, and then all you need to do next to add connections to the right over here, look for the three dots, select that, and then select block user. From here, you could select either to block them or block and report if they were doing something that broke the rules. I'm just going to select block as an example. Then once you block them, you'll see that add connection is no longer available. So we have successfully blocked that person on Roblox. If this video helped you, give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to my channel.
Moving on to looking at anti-Black hate through social media. TikTok has also played a key role in spreading active shooter studios content, like we talked about before. People who look into these kinds of things, so people like social media analysts and researchers, they found numerous TikTok accounts sharing gameplay footage of mass shooting recreations made by ASS and even other groups of people as well. The comment sections of these videos are often filled with requests for the names of and links to these kinds of games. Instagram can also have and spread hateful content. I'm sure we've seen a bunch of videos that are spewing anti-Black hate towards people, or even within the comments where people are saying hateful things about Black people or Black, specifically even Black women. I've seen a lot of hate toward Black women on these platforms, either directly in a post or in a comment section underneath a certain post. Some may also use direct messaging, or as we know it as our DMs, on these social media apps to send hate speech and videos or photos that involve and include violence and extremist language or symbols. These DMs can often come from sometimes people you know, whether it's someone that is spewing hate in your school and they find your online platform and they start sending you this material, or even from strangers and random accounts that you don't know. So let's look at how we can block those kinds of people and even those kinds of hate as well. Because honestly, when it comes to experiencing hate on social media, the best thing you can do if you see anti-Black hate on TikTok, Instagram, or any social media platform is to report the user or like the profile, block, and restrict that type of content so that Instagram also shows it to you less. So let's watch a few short videos as well showing how you can block people, but also how you can block certain kinds of content.
How to block someone on Instagram. Open the Instagram app. Tap on the message icon. Select the profile you want to block. Tap on top of the chat screen to move his profile. Then, look for the 3 dots in the upper right corner of the screen. Tap on it, and a menu will appear. From the menu, select Block. Instagram will then ask you to confirm that you want to block the account. Tap Block to proceed. Instagram will confirm that the account has been blocked. They won't be able to find your profile, posts, or stories on Instagram anymore. For more tech videos, subscribe to our channel.
So that one was about blocking people, but let's say you also just want to block any kind of content that spews anti-Black hate or hateful narratives, using certain words, certain language, or even certain sounds. Instagram also has a function that allows you to do that too.
Let's block content on Instagram. Now, if there's a certain phrase or type of content or category that you keep seeing on Instagram, on your reels, on your explore page and posts, and you wanted to block it or not see it anymore, I'll show you how to do that. So let's hop into Instagram here, and I'm going to tap the little search at the bottom left. Now here you can see a bunch of different posts, and say you can see at the top left skiing. If you don't want any skiing videos anymore, for instance, you can tap the profile at the bottom right, the 3 lines at the top right, and we will choose settings. Then hit privacy and hidden words. Now on here, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can manage custom words and phrases. So I can tap on that, and let's just type in skiing. I'm going to hit done here. You can add other phrases that are related to it. You could add in ski, snow, stuff like that, and hit done. So now the cool part is you just toggle on hide posts, and it says posts that contain words on your custom list and similar misspellings will be hidden. So anything that's related to skiing will now not show up on my specific phone. So it's a good way to modify that explore page, or at least limit what is on there, and you can decide certain things that you don't necessarily want to see on posts or on that explore page. Hope this helps. Thanks for your time today, and I'll see you on the next one.
So now that we've discussed what anti-Black hate can look like, oh, actually, sorry, we're not moving on yet. Let's also look at TikTok. So again, most of these social media platforms are somewhat the same as it relates to having the ability to block, restrict, and report accounts, but also restricting certain content. I know TikTok's a really, really popular social media app, probably more popular now amongst youth than even Instagram. So let's also watch this last video on how you can restrict certain content on TikTok.
Welcome back, everyone. In this video, I want to show you how to stop TikTok showing you videos which you're not interested in. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you enjoy these kind of videos and turn on bell notification. If this video helps you out, then please hit that like button and let me know in the comment section down below. So, are you seeing content on TikTok which you're not interested in? Or maybe you don't want to see content from a specific user or from a specific sound. Since TikTok learns your watching habits, it then displays a similar video to you in the For You page. So let me show you how to stop TikTok showing you a video which you're not interested in. Open your TikTok app on your phone. Now make sure the For You is selected at the top. Choose a video which you're not interested in or you want to see less of it. Long press on the video. You'll see a menu appear. From the menu, select Not Interested. This will then remove the video from your For You page, and TikTok will tell you that it will show fewer of that type of videos. Now, if you want to stop seeing videos from a specific user, then you can long press on the video. Within the menu, you'll see not interested, but if you look to the right of it, you'll see more options. Tap on it. Now tap on hide video from this user. This will stop showing you videos from that specific user. Again, similar methods can be used if you want to hide videos with specific sound. And there you go, that is how to stop TikTok showing you videos which you are not interested in. My name is Karthik and you're watching Simple Dad. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.
Now, we've talked a lot about, again, what this hate can look like, and often it happening or coming from strangers or people that are not your friends. But unfortunately, it might happen that one of your friends or someone that you're close with, maybe even a family member, might actually be involved in spreading hate online. So, what do you do in those circumstances? If you think a friend of yours or someone you know may be spreading hate online or is even at risk of being involved in an online hate group, maybe they've responded to a chat room message or something that they told you about, and you remember from this presentation, hey, that might actually be a red flag. The first thing you should do is tell your parents or a trusted adult about the fact that you think this person might be involved in spreading hate or hate online. Then, if that adult thinks it might be okay to do so, speak to your friend or that person directly about your suspicions, but never do that by yourself. Always try to engage in the conversation with either a trusted adult or even bringing along a couple of friends. Make it a group thing in order to, again, keep yourself safe. You should also openly discuss social and political issues with other friends and people in your age group in order to create sort of an open dialogue around these things, to raise awareness about these things. You should also tell your friend that spreading online hate is bad and harmful to the people targeted, and let them know that there are potential legal consequences and other consequences that can come from that behavior. Now let's actually talk about what the impact of hate actually is on your mind, on your body, and on even just your relationships. The reality is that there's a long history of, and even your present day exposure to anti-Black racism and anti-Black hate, and it has a large impact on your overall health and well-being as a Black person, and especially as a youth. And this is called racial trauma. It refers to the mental and emotional injury that results from experiencing racism, racial discrimination, being the subject of stereotypes, hate crimes, and even other race-related stressors, whether they happen to you directly or indirectly. So sometimes you might find yourself responding or reacting to anti-Black hate, not necessarily because you were the direct target of it, but sometimes because you witnessed it happen to someone else. Maybe you saw a video of a hateful incident that's happening maybe in Canada or maybe elsewhere in the world. You might still find yourself responding mentally, emotionally, even physically within your body. And that's just your body responding to the racial trauma that's taking place. Because whether it happens directly to you or you witness it happening to somebody else, your body is still going to be able to react and to respond to it. And so in order to better understand and heal from the collective impact of anti-Black hate, it's important that we look at it from what's called a biopsychosocial perspective. And I know biopsychosocial seems like a big word, but it's really just comparing, or not comparing, but putting together the biological, the psychological, which is your mind, and the social aspects of who you are as a person. And it helps us understand things from a more holistic perspective. So biologically, it looks at how the structures in your brain and nervous system respond to threats to your safety and to your well-being. Psychologically, it looks at how we think and feel about ourselves and other people. And then socially, it also impacts how we behave and how we interact with other people in society. Now, some examples of the impact of racial trauma because of anti-Black hate. Like, what does it actually look like? Experiencing anti-Black hate has an impact on us biologically in multiple ways, but the main part of the biological impact starts with the amygdala. If you've taken a psychology class, you might have heard that term before. And it's essentially a structure in your brain that's responsible for processing emotions like fear, anxiety, and helping you recognize danger. The amygdala is known as the fear center of the brain. It helps you identify when you're in danger and helps your body respond appropriately to help you survive. So, your brain, in an effort to protect you, recognizes patterns of threats to help you respond quicker to a potential threat, increasing your chances of survival. Our bodies respond to anti-Black hate by triggering the amygdala because it recognizes it as a threat to our lives, safety, and well-being. And it's important to keep in mind that our brains react similarly to physical hate that happens in front of us with our own eyes in the same way that it does when it responds to online hate, when that hate is happening behind a screen. The amygdala still registers it as a perceived threat to your safety and well-being as a Black person, and therefore your body will react accordingly. Psychologically, experiencing racial trauma impacts the way that we think and process information about ourselves and other people. For example, if our brain perceives a threat due to experiencing anti-Black hate online, we may begin to experience intrusive thoughts about ourselves, lower self-esteem, or even self-esteem issues or self-confidence issues. Jumping back up really quickly to even the biological aspect, what that might look like when our amygdala gets triggered, you might know it as the fight, flight, or freeze system. Often your palms can get sweaty, your heartbeat can begin to race, or even feel like it's skipping a beat. Your body or your muscles can get really tense, or your jaw can clench up. And these are all aspects of your body biologically responding to the hate that's happening. And getting onto the social aspect, socially, racial trauma also impacts the way that we interact with each other and society at large. Some youth may experience things like social anxiety, even in in-person settings, or experience social withdrawal. You may also stop deciding to engage in online gaming platforms that you normally would like and you normally would enjoy, but now that all of this anti-Black hate has been happening or someone randomly messages you, you may feel the tendency now to, put the gaming away or come off of social media. And while it is healthy to take some time away every now and again and actually go out with your friends physically, maybe go to an escape room or something, or an actual arcade game, or playing a sport or something with your friends. It's definitely good to do those things as well, and it's healthy to do that. But often we can find ourselves fully withdrawing from things that we normally would like, not because we realize that it's healthy to do that sometimes, but because we're actually being negatively impacted by what's happening on those platforms. And that's something that we want to just be mindful of. It's important to keep in mind that everyone also does respond differently to racial trauma. So going through all of the things that I just discussed, it's normal and it's expected to be impacted by racial trauma. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or even your friend if they are telling you about anti-Black hate that they've experienced and how it's impacting them. Our bodies, minds, and emotions are simply reacting to legitimate and real threats against our safety. So there's nothing wrong with you. However, delayed responses or prolonged responses, or when we're experiencing these symptoms on an ongoing basis over time, they actually do have a really bad impact on our health long term. And so it's important that you learn some coping strategies and also have a supportive community around you that can help support you through these experiences. Going back to what we spoke about earlier, this stage of development that you as youth are in. Right now, your self-identity is what's being developed in this time, and anti-Black hate really cuts to the root of that. And so it's really important that we don't just ignore anti-Black hate when it's happening or put it on the shelf. Instead, it's important to actually discuss it with trusted community and use certain coping mechanisms that can help you heal from racial trauma so that it doesn't have a lasting impact on you over time. And so that it also doesn't impact your self-identity as you get older. Despite there being a serious impact of anti-Black hate on our lives, even as young people, I want you to know that there is hope for healing. Once you can identify and name what's happening in your body or what's happening in your mind, you can then develop healthy ways to cope and to help you heal. It also gives you the opportunity to socially help others in your friend group as well when they experience these things. So let's talk some coping strategies. This clip that you see on the screen is actually taken from a much larger document that was just put in the chat, and I want you guys to click on that. Go to that link, because in addition to this picture that's giving you 50 ways, a bunch of ways that you can take a break, that you can put the phone away, put the video game away, and just focus on taking care of your mind, your body, and your own soul and spirit. That link also has a bunch of other really, really great coping strategies and exercises, even worksheets that you can print off and actually do mindfulness and gratefulness activities to really help you ground and anchor your self-esteem and your identity, despite the anti-Black hate that you may have just experienced or witnessed, whether online or in person. Some of the strategies that I think are really great here is going to a body of water. I personally love going to a large lake or a river, doing a river walk, taking some deep breaths while just engaging in nature. That's a really, really great way to help your body calm itself down, and also to help just give your mind the break that it needs. You can also do something like watching the clouds. So let's say you're laying on your couch or in your bed, you see or experience some anti-Black hate online. What that would practically look like in that moment in terms of how you can cope with that experience is by putting the phone down and actually getting up, taking a few deep breaths, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth a couple of times. And if it's daytime or it's sunny outside, actually go outside and watch the clouds. This might sound weird, but I promise you it works. It gives your body and your mind the opportunity to look at and pay attention to something different than the thing that just caused you harm. Something you can also do if you're not much of a nature person is actually engage in journaling or drawing or even writing a letter. You can choose to write a letter to yourself that reminds you of who you are and just how great and beautiful and handsome you are, how smart you are. Or you could even write a letter to a general person about and expressing the impact that their hateful actions or hateful narrative had on you. Growing up as a teenager, I loved writing poetry and spoken word poetry. And that was something I used as an outlet to help me cope with a lot of different things that I was experiencing, whether it was racism in school or hate in school, or even just things that happened in relationships. I always found it as a really good outlet. Another example of a great coping strategy is to call a friend. So calling someone that you trust, letting them know what happened and getting support from them so you're not dealing with it on your own. Having that person-to-person contact is always, always super, super helpful and encouraging. In order to deal with and cope with the physical aspects of it, so the biological aspects of experiencing hate, you have to be a lot more intentional, because sometimes your body reacts without you even fully being aware of it. You might see something online and your jaw begins to clench up, and you might not realize your jaw is clenching until you actually intentionally take an inventory of what's happening in your body. So there's one thing you'll see here that actually talks about noticing your body. So Intentionally, that could look like sitting down in a chair or even taking a minute to stand up and actively thinking about each part of your body going from your head to your toe. And you might realize that there's some tension in some of these places. Maybe your shoulders are super tense up here, and now you're able to intentionally relax them and remove some of the tension from your body. Really quickly, other examples here look like putting on some music and dancing, whether it's hip hop music or gospel music, if that's your thing, lo-fi, putting on some music and just dancing and letting it all go. That's a great coping strategy as well. As you can see, there's a bunch here and a bunch also in the document that's provided in the chat. Definitely click the link, save it, bookmark it, and let it be something that you go through as time goes on to help you cope. I also strongly encourage using positive affirmations. These are things that you can say to yourself out loud, that you can write down on little sticky notes and put on a mirror, or even stick it on the wall in your room. Things like, my life has value and it matters. I am the descendant of greatness and not the image that has been written for me throughout history. I'm allowed to feel anger whenever I experience or witness anti-Black hate or violence. I do have the ability to heal, and we will overcome. Do you guys want to put some positive affirmations in the chat that you might use for yourself or even for others? Let's take a few minutes to share some with each other. Any positive affirmations you can think of? Just think of something that might help you just remember how great you are, or something you might even say to a friend who might be struggling in a moment. That's a great one, Dawn. I'm perfect the way I am. That's a really good one. It's also important when we're navigating through anti-Black hate in the online world to stay safe and supported. And I want to encourage you not to do it alone. Step one, and this is a quick two-step process. Oh, I like that one you added there. Sorry, I moved on too quickly. You matter to me. Yes, and actually saying that to yourself and to your friend. You matter. So important. Along that same line of community and friendship and affirmation, it is so important that as you guys as youth navigate your online world, don't try to do it alone. Number one, if you experience anti-Black hate online, report the issue or incident appropriately. So if it happens on one of the platforms that we discussed, you watched the videos, I found those on YouTube by clicking like a how to block on X, Y, and Z. So if you forgot or it went too fast and you didn't get all of the notes, feel free to look that up. And you can also, like I said, look it up for any other video gaming or social media platform. There is a way that you can block, restrict, and even report certain content. But in addition to just reporting it on the platform itself, depending on how serious what you just witnessed or experienced is, it's also important, and actually, regardless of how serious it is, always tell your parent or a trusted adult. Always have them involved in what's happening so that they can also help keep you safe, because they might be aware of other things that you may not be aware of, and they can help you in that moment. Depending on how and where the incident occurred, you should report it in that way too. So also, even though this presentation has been about online hate, even if you experience anti-Black hate in person, that's something where you can be calling the police and getting other authorities involved. If it happens in your school, report it to the principal. And also, again, as I said before, have open conversations with trusted people about what's happening. And step two, I always encourage everyone to create a safety plan. Have a well thought out plan in place that you can use the next time you experience anti-Black hate. And this might include some of the coping strategies that we talked about earlier, the particular person or adult that you'll reach out to when something happens. And I want to encourage you to actually create this plan and maybe put it in like the memo pad of your phone, in the notepad of your phone, or write it on a piece of paper, but actually be intentional about this. Maybe that's also how you can start having the conversation with your parent or your trusted adult about anti-Black hate in your online space, is actually sitting down with them and letting them know, hey, I just watched this presentation. There's anti-Black hate that could be happening or that is happening and that might happen to me. If I do see something, I don't want it to impact me in a negative way long term. So can you help me create this safety plan? And you can actually sit with that adult and create out a step-by-step plan of, okay, if you see or experience this, here's what I'm going to do. Here's who I'm going to call. I'm going to remember that I can block and report anybody on these social media platforms. And ultimately, you can keep that trusted adult or that parent involved in what's happening in your online space as well. Remember again that you are not alone. Something you can do to support yourself and even your friends is to talk about it. Talk about it in your groups, but also if it's really getting to that point where it's not if, but even if you can talk, sorry, let me rephrase that. I also want to encourage you to always be okay with going to therapy. Whether you think you're in a moment of like extreme distress, or maybe there's just some things that you've experienced that bother you sometimes. There's never anything wrong with actually connecting with a mental health professional. I have my own therapist, and I would also encourage you to get one. Someone who is trauma informed, culturally appropriate, and they're an actual licensed mental health professional. You can talk to them about the things that you've experienced, the things that you're seeing, and how it's impacting you. There was a quote that goes, "A problem shared is a problem half solved," or "a problem shared is half solved," meaning that once you share it, it's no longer something that you are keeping to yourself and that's impacting you in a negative way, but it's now something that you can share and get help and get support with and come to a solution. Something to also keep in mind is self-empowerment. Remember you have the power to take control over your mental and emotional health and empower yourself by building yourself up through even using some of the positive affirmations that we talked about today. It's also important to practice reframing your thoughts and even your language, the way that you think and talk about yourself. It's important to remember that people of color are the global majority. There are more people of color in the world than white people. However, in Canada, we often hear the term of like ethnic minority or racial minority, but actually we're the global majority. So thinking about yourself in those ways is also important too. It's also really important to engage in healing self-care practices, which help counteract the impact of stress and harm that anti-Black hate causes on your body and on your mind. And some of these exercises we've talked about in terms of your coping strategies: listening to music, doing breathing exercises, practicing mindfulness, doing meditations, and even practicing gratitude. Ultimately, as youth, because of that stage that you guys are in of identity versus role confusion, it's really important that you anchor your self-esteem and your self-identity. Experiencing anti-Black hate online is not just about the trauma of the incident itself, but also the story that you as youth may tell yourself about what just happened to you. It's important that you tell yourself a good story, a positive and helpful story, centered on the fact that you matter and that your identity is not tied to what other people might say or think about you. Thank you for listening to today's presentation, and feel free to pop in the chat if you have any questions. There's also a feedback form that was just put in the chat. And if you have any feedback for us about what you liked or what you think could be improved in this presentation, we want to hear from you. So please go ahead, click that Google form link, and let us know your feedback. Thank you again for attending today's presentation, and I hope it was helpful to you.